Okay, let's set the scene. It's July 2024. Big government announcement, lots of fanfare. They unveil this employment-linked incentive scheme, the ELI.
Right, the ELI. And the headline promise was huge.
Huge is right. We're talking 4.1 crore jobs
Wow.
for young people over 5 years, with a pretty substantial budget behind it, too.
Yeah, and if you're tuning in, you probably heard about it. I mean, an announcement that big aimed at youth unemployment, it definitely gets attention.
Exactly. It's targeting a really, really critical issue for India.
Oh, absolutely critical. Just to give some context, back in 2023, the numbers are pretty stark. Over 47% of the working age population were, unemployed or underemployed or stuck in low-skill jobs.
That's nearly half. And it's not just a statistic, is it? It's frustration, it's graduates without prospects, skilled people without the right opportunities. It's potential going unrealized.
Precisely. It's about dashed hopes, dreams deferred, a massive human cost.
So along comes the ELI scheme. And the initial plan, well, it sounded pretty comprehensive, didn't it?
It did, on paper at least. They talked about three main parts. Let's just call them A, B, and C for simplicity.
Okay.
So component A involved things like salary top-ups for new workers, provided they were registered with the EPFO.
Right, the Employees Provident Fund Organization. Formal sector benefits.
Exactly. Then component B had incentives, specifically for manufacturing, also tied to those EPFO contributions.
In C.
That was about reimbursing employers for their share of those contributions, sort of easing the burden on businesses hiring new people.
And there was more, too, wasn't there? Upgrading ITIs, internship.
Oh, yeah. Plans to upgrade 1,000 industrial training institutes. Those are key vocational centers. And get this, internships for 20 lakh young people every single year.
Wow. So it really did paint a picture of a multi-pronged attack on the problem.
It certainly aimed to look that way, comprehensive, ambitious. You couldn't fault the scale of the vision initially.
But here we are, April 2025.
Yeah.
Almost a year later. And, well, the story taking a bit of an unexpected turn.
Unexpected and, frankly, quite concerning.
Yeah. So we're now hearing reports, quite credible ones, that the R's 10,000 crore budget allocated for ELI for 2024-25.
The first year's budget.
Right. It wasn't spent at all. It's apparently been returned to the Treasury.
That's the core of it. And the reason given, this is the kicker, the scheme hasn't actually been defined yet.
Defined. 9 months after the big launch.
The actual specifics, the rules of the game, how it's supposed to work, eligibility, subsidy amounts, which industries qualify, apparently, none of that has been finalized.
That's kind of staggering, isn't it?
It really is. Think about it from the listener's perspective. A massive promise, a dedicated budget, and then paralysis because the basic operating manual hasn't been written.
It feels almost like, announcing you've ordered a pizza to feed everyone, taking the money, but then months later admitting the restaurant hasn't figured out what a pizza is.
That's not a bad analogy, actually. It highlights the absurdity, the disconnect between the announcement and the operational reality. And you can imagine the frustration building.
Yeah. No doubt. Especially for young people counting on these opportunities. And predictably, this hasn't gone unnoticed politically.
Not at all. The opposition has been quite vocal.
Yeah, Rahul Gandhi, specifically. Around April 10th this year, he came out pretty strongly. He called the ELI scheme a jumla.
Which, for anyone unfamiliar, is a term often used to mean an empty promise, right? Something that sounds good but has no substance. A slogan.
Exactly. He used an analogy too, didn't he? Something about Diwali.
He did. He compared the big ELI announcement to someone promising a huge, spectacular Diwali party.
Okay.
And then just showing up with a single sparkler.
Ouch. So, grand expectations, minimal delivery. That's the message.
That's the clear implication. Big noise, little follow-through.
And his criticism went deeper too. It wasn't just about the money not being spent. He talked about priorities.
Yes, he raised concerns that the government seems more focused on supporting large corporations. There were mentions, or at least suggestions, of favoring big business groups.
Like the Adanis were mentioned, that perception.
Right, that perception. And he argued this comes at the expense of the MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises.
Which he argued are the real job engines.
Exactly. He cited that statistic MSMEs employing over 19 crore people. That's a colossal number.
It really puts it in perspective.
So his argument is basically shift the focus, invest properly in MSMEs, create fairer market conditions, and make sure skills training is actually relevant to the jobs these smaller businesses offer.
It's a different strategy, fundamentally, empowering the smaller players.
It is. And it's an important viewpoint for listeners to understand this debate about where job creation efforts should be concentrated. Big industry versus the smaller, more dispersed businesses.
So with all this criticism, the stalled scheme, the unspent money,
Oh.
what's been the government's response? Has they pushed back, explained the delay?
Well, that's the other really interesting part. There's been a noticeable lack of response, a silence almost.
Really, no detailed rebuttal, no clear timeline for getting it moving.
Not that we've seen publicly. No strong defense against the jumla criticism, no explanation for why it's still undefined, no roadmap for implementation.
That silence is pretty loud in a way.
It is, and it leads to speculation, naturally. Are they scrambling behind the scenes trying to fix it? Are they hoping people just forget about it? Or maybe they just don't see the criticism as valid. It's hard to know for sure.
Okay, let's try and unpack why it might be stalled. We know India's employment situation is complex. Huge workforce.
Massive. 56.5 crore people in the workforce in 2023 and growing. Creating enough good jobs is, it's a monumental task for any government, no question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But focusing specifically on ELI, what are the roadblocks? You mentioned undefined.
That seems to be the biggest, most immediate hurdle. Without clear rules, who gets what, how much, for doing what, in which sector, nobody can act. Businesses can't apply, officials can't process anything. It's basic operational paralysis.
Like trying to run a race without knowing where the finish line is.
Exactly. You just can't start. Then there's the coordination aspect.
Right. Multiple players involved.
Oh, yes. You've likely got the Ministry of Labor, the EPFO, various state governments, maybe other ministries, plus all the private companies meant to benefit or participate.
Right.
Getting all those ducks in a row.
It can be a nightmare. Bottlenecks, communication breakdowns.
Potentially, yes. Especially with something this complex, crossing different levels of government and the private sector.
And then that point about focused large companies versus MSMEs, how does that play into the roadblocks?
Well, the argument is that the design might be part of the problem. If the incentives, as structured, are more easily accessible or beneficial for larger firms, but the bulk of job creation potential lies with MSMEs.
I think you have a mismatch.
Precisely. And there's the funding question. That Rs 100 crore guarantee fund for MSMEs mentioned in the budget, critics point to that and say, well, is that really enough support for a sector employing 19 crore people compared to the potential scale of incentives under ELI that might flow elsewhere?
It raises questions about resource allocation, definitely. Is the support going where it's most needed or where it can generate the most jobs?
That's the debate. Is it designed for the biggest employers or the sectors with the most potential new jobs? Not always the same thing.
And the political timing adds another layer, doesn't it? Announced after the 2024 elections.
Right. Unemployment was a huge election issue, so announcing a massive job scheme looked like a direct response.
But if it then stalls so badly?
It risks undermining public trust. People start wondering if it was more about the announcement itself than the actual delivery. That erodes confidence.
Okay, so that paints a picture of the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pivot towards solutions. What needs to happen? What are people suggesting?
Well, one very strong theme is, unsurprisingly, much stronger, more tangible support for MSMEs.
Beyond just promises.
Exactly. Things like seriously cutting down on red tape, the compliance burden, which can be crushing for small businesses, maybe targeted tax breaks for actually hiring new people, making it easier for them to get loans, practical stuff.
Things that make a real difference to their bottom line and ability to expand.
Precisely, freeing up their resources to hire. And then there's skills training. That's another huge one.
We mentioned the low rate of formal vocational training.
Yeah, around 4.4%, despite millions in education. It's a disconnect. The training needs to be practical, relevant to what industries actually need now.
Like what?
Well, think about emerging fields. AI coding, sure. But also green jobs, solar panel installation, repair, drone maintenance, operation, skills for the modern economy.
And the internships need to be real, right? Not just fetching coffee.
Absolutely. Paid, structured internships that offer genuine experience, a foot in the door, not just box-ticking exercises, meaningful pathways.
What else? Fair markets.
Yes, that's crucial too. If monopolies or near monopolies dominate, it kills competition and innovation, which ultimately limits job growth. So effective antitrust enforcement, promoting a level playing field that helps smaller, newer businesses emerge and hire.
And ensuring everyone benefits. Inclusion.
Vital. Any big scheme like ELI needs built-in measures to make sure marginalized communities aren't excluded. Targeted support might be needed to ensure equitable access to the opportunities created.
And finally, tracking progress. Transparency.
Hugely important for trust and effectiveness. We need clear, public data. How many jobs are actually being created by the scheme? Which sectors are benefiting? Is it working?
So you can see what's effective and adjust if needed. Accountability.
Exactly. Data-driven policy, not just announcements.
Okay, so wrapping this up, looking back at ELI itself, does it still have potential despite the current mess?
Well, the core ideas. Linking incentives to formalization via EPFO, that's positive. Encouraging formal employment has benefits.
Right, so security, better protections.
And the focus on manufacturing, the push for internships, those are potentially good elements too. And it's a big if right now.
If they can get it off the ground.
If they can define it, fund it, coordinate it, and actually implement it effectively. The potential benefits are there, but they are purely theoretical at this point.
The urgency is clear, though.
Immense. They need to finalize the details, get the money flowing, and show results. Tangible jobs. Soon.
Because this isn't just policy debates, is it? As we said at the start.
No, it's about people's lives. The future of India's youth. Every unemployed young person is potential like a coder, a mechanic, a teacher.
Someone ready to contribute.
Exactly. So the big question hanging over all this is, will ELI break through these hurdles and deliver? Will it actually create those millions of jobs?
Or will it end up as another footnote? A cautionary tale of good intentions gone astray.
That's what we need to watch. The answer matters profoundly for the economy and for the millions of young Indians waiting for an opportunity.
Indeed. It's a story that's far from over. We'll need to keep a close eye on whether those promises from 2024 eventually translate into real change on the ground.